Ready for another deep dive? Let's do it. Today we're cracking open Adam Alter's book, Irresistible, Why You Are Addicted to Tech and How to Set Yourself Free.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to dig into this one.
It's all about behavioral addiction, how it's not just substances that can hook us, but everyday behaviors too.
Right, and that's what I think is so sneaky about it. We often think of addiction as this thing like tied to drugs or alcohol,
Totally.
but Alter really opens our eyes to how things like using tech, gaming, even shopping can tap into those same reward pathways in our brain.
Yeah, it's wild how our brains don't seem to care what we're doing to get that relief?
Yeah.
Like as long as it gets that hit stress, boredom, whatever, we're chasing that activity.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
like the more we repeat that cycle, those pathways,
hmm
they get stronger,
Yeah.
you know, makes it even harder to resist.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of things that are tough to resist, let's talk about the tech folks behind those apps and games that keep us glued to our screens.
Okay, yeah.
Alter points out this fascinating paradox. A lot of these tech entrepreneurs, they restrict their own kids' use of this stuff.
It's true. It's kind of like they're sending a message with that, like,
Yeah.
hey, this is powerful stuff. Be careful.
Right. Like they understand the risks more than anyone because they built it.
Exactly. Yeah,
I even read that some of them send their kids to schools that are completely tech-free.
I believe it.
It makes you wonder, like, what do they know that we don't? What are they so worried about?
Right. And it makes you think this isn't just about each person's responsibility, but how these products are designed, like on purpose, to be addictive.
It's a little unnerving when you think about it like that. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, the science behind all of this. What is actually happening in our brains when we talk about addiction?
Well, dopamine's a big part of it, that feel-good chemical.
Hmm.
Our brains release it when we experience something pleasurable, and that's totally normal. But the problem is certain activities, especially those with those intermittent rewards, they can send dopamine levels way up.
Intermittent rewards. I don't think I'm familiar with that term.
It's that maybe this time
Yeah.
feeling. Like slot machines, you don't win every time.
Yeah.
But the chance of hitting the jackpot, that keeps you coming back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's like that rush we get when we check our phones, like hoping for notifications or refreshing our social media feeds for likes and comments?
Exactly. That's it. And because those rewards, they're unpredictable, our brains get hooked on chasing that dopamine surge over and over again.
So basically, our brains are stuck on this like endless roller coaster, anticipation and reward, all thanks to cleverly designed apps and games.
You got it. And to really get how powerful this cycle is, it helps to look back at how we used to think about addiction, how it's changed. Holter uses the example of cocaine back in the late 1800s.
Cocaine, wow, that seems like a pretty extreme example.
It does, right.
What's the story there?
Well, back then, cocaine didn't have the same, stigma. It was marketed as this wonder drug, added to everything, drinks, medicine, you name it.
Wow.
Even Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, he was a huge fan.
No way. He actually prescribed cocaine to his patients.
He did, for all kinds of things, depression, indigestion. But what's so interesting is that cocaine's story, it kind of mirrors what we see with behavioral addiction now.
So you're saying that initial appeal, that feeling of this is great, that can spiral into something much darker.
Exactly. It's like a honeymoon phase at first. It feels beneficial, but then that addictive quality takes over. People become consumed by it, often at the expense of everything else in their life.
Wow, yeah, that's a striking parallel. So how did we go from cocaine as a miracle cure to understanding the dark side of addiction, not just to substances, but to behaviors as well?
It was a gradual thing, for
Yeah.
sure, driven by research, by a better understanding of how our brains work. One study that really shifted things involved Vietnam War veterans.
Oh, wow, okay. This is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about this study.
Yeah, so during the Vietnam War, heroin use was really common among the soldiers.
Right.
And there was this huge fear that when they came back home, there'd be this massive problem with addiction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like imagining all these veterans coming home only to struggle with that.
Right, exactly.
So what happened?
Well, a researcher named Lee Robbins, she did this groundbreaking study, and the findings were really surprising. Turns out, most of the soldiers who were hooked on heroin during the war, they didn't go back to it when they came home.
Wow. That's not what you'd expect.
Right. It really challenged what people thought about addiction at the time.
So what explains that? Why didn't they relapse?
It made people reconsider that idea that addiction was just about the substance itself. Robbins' research pointed to the importance of context. Think about it. These soldiers were in a war zone. Trauma, stress, it was all around. Heroin was an escape for them, a way to block out the pain.
So when they came back to a more normal environment, that urge to escape, it just wasn't there as much.
Yeah, pretty much. It really emphasized the why behind these behaviors.
Yeah.
It's not always just about the drug or the activity, but what need it's fulfilling. And that's what makes tech so complicated. It's so ingrained in everything we do.
Oh, for sure. It's everywhere. Are there other historical examples, that show just how important that why is?
Absolutely. In the 60s, there was this fascinating study with rats. Researchers found that they could stimulate specific parts of the rats' brains, the areas linked to pleasure and reward, and the rats would actually choose that stimulation over food and water.
Wait, seriously, they'd rather just stimulate their brains than eat or drink.
Yeah, it was kind of intense. They would keep going until they were totally exhausted, or in some cases, they even died.
That's wild.
It showed just how strong that dopamine response could be, how it could overpower their survival instincts.
Oh, okay. So as fascinating and a little scary as that is, we're not talking about, literally plugging our brains into our phones. So how does that rat study connect to our, let's call it love affair with technology?
Good point. We're not hooking ourselves up to electrodes or anything,
Yeah.
but what's going on underneath is really similar. Think about those endlessly scrolling social media feeds or games that are designed to make you wait, like hours before you can play again.
Oh, yeah.
They're tapping into that same urge for more, more, more.
Okay, I see what you mean. It's those notifications that pop up telling you to come back, or those limited time offers that make you feel like you'll miss out.
Exactly. And those things are on purpose. It's not by accident, it's by design.
Hmm.
These apps and games, they're built based on how our brains work, how we respond to those rewards, and they use that to keep us hooked.
So how do we break free then? If it's all designed to be so addictive, how do we regain control? I know Alter talks about solutions in Irresistible, right?
He does. One thing he emphasizes is creating what he calls stopping cues. These are things that interrupt the addictive experience, making you pause and think.
Stopping cues. Okay, can you give me an example? How would that work in real life?
Okay, well, think about old slot machines.
Yeah.
You could just keep putting coins in until you were broke, right?
Right.
But nowadays, lots of machines make you get up and go to an ATM if you want to keep playing.
Yeah.
That creates a break in the action. It gives you a chance to think, do I really want to keep doing this?
Ah, I get it. You're forced to step back from it for a second, break that trance, even if it's brief.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the interruption, that moment of disengaging. And with technology, it's about finding ways to create those same kinds of breaks.
So like putting your phone down for a bit, turning off notifications, setting app limits, those are all stopping cues.
They can be, absolutely. It's recognizing that these things have power over us and choosing to step away.
Besides stopping cues, what other strategies does Alter suggest?
Well, he also talks about mindfulness, and how we talk about our relationship with tech. Like, instead of saying, I can't resist checking my phone, you could try, I choose to check my phone.
So it's more about taking responsibility, reminding ourselves that we have a choice.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're not powerless. We have control over how we interact with this stuff.
I like that. So we've got stopping cues, mindfulness, changing how we talk about it. Anything else in Alter's toolbox?
He's got a lot of good stuff in there. He also talks about this idea of gamifying good habits, using those same principles that can lead to addiction, but to encourage positive stuff instead.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like fighting fire with fire, but in a good way. So instead of getting that rush from, say, scrolling endlessly on social media, you get it from hitting your fitness goals or learning a new skill or something.
Exactly. Finding those healthy ways to tap into that reward system. But, Alter also spends some time on a specific part of technology that's really addictive: social media.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. It's practically built to be addicting, with the likes and comments and shares.
It really plays on that basic human need for connection, for validation. We're social creatures, it makes sense.
And social media feeds that. But like you said earlier, it's not really a replacement for real human connection, right?
That's what Alter argues. And the research backs it up. He says that face-to-face interaction is so crucial, especially for kids. It's how we develop those social skills, emotional intelligence, all of that.
So what's so special about face-to-face that we can't get online?
Well, think about it. When you're with someone in person, you're picking up on a lot more than just their words. You see their facial expressions, their body language, you hear their tone of voice.
You get the full picture, not just a piece of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really important for things like empathy, understanding and responding to other people's emotions. That's much harder to do online.
That's true. So is Alter saying that too much time online, especially on social media, could actually make it harder to connect with others on a deeper level?
That's what he suggests, yeah? Studies are showing that kids who spend less time on screens and more time interacting face-to-face are actually better at understanding those emotional cues.
Yeah.
It makes you think about what we might be sacrificing for the sake of convenience.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. So then how do we strike that balance? I mean, we can't exactly disconnect completely, can we?
It's tough, for sure, but it's about being mindful of our screen time,
Mhm.
and making that effort to prioritize real-life connections.
It sounds like a lot of this comes back to mindfulness, doesn't it? Being present in our interactions, both online and offline.
Exactly. Remembering that technology isn't inherently good or bad, it's how we use it.
That's a good point. It goes back to what we were saying before about those tech leaders who limit their own kids' screen time. It's not about saying technology is evil, but being aware of both the good and bad and using it in a way that serves us.
Right. And Alter actually offers some practical ideas for how tech itself could be designed to be less addictive, to actually support our well-being.
Oh, that's interesting. So instead of bombarding us with notifications and endless scrolling, he's imagining tech experiences that actually encourage breaks and mindfulness.
Yes. Designing for intentionality, not just engagement. Like, what if platforms had built-in stopping cues, reminders about how much time you spent online, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like those time to stand up alerts on your watch, but for your brain.
Exactly. Or games that have natural stopping points built in, like chapters in a book, not just endless loops that keep you playing for hours and hours.
It all comes back to that idea of agency, of taking back control. It's not about getting rid of technology altogether, but about figuring out how to make it work for us, how to use these tools in a way that makes our lives better, not worse.
That's it. It's about recognizing the power of technology, both good and bad. We have the power to decide how we interact with these things and how they fit into our lives.
This has been such an interesting conversation. So much to think about. This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
I agree. It's really made me think differently about how these patterns show up in our lives and how much power we've given to technology without even realizing it.
Irresistible doesn't just highlight a problem, though. It gives us hope, too. It's about understanding what's going on so we can create a healthier, more balanced relationship with tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a call to action. We have the ability to choose how we use these tools and shape their role in our lives. We can create tech that works with us, not against us.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed diving into this with you.
Me too. Always fun to explore these topics with you.
For sure. So until next time, keep those stopping cues in mind, stay mindful, and don't let those unfinished loops run your life. It's like when you're playing a game and you're so close to winning, but then you lose at the very last second. You just gotta try again?
Yeah, exactly. It's that almost there feeling, that tension that keeps us hooked. And it's not just like movies and games either. What about when you're almost done with a project, but then something happens, you got to put it on hold? So frustrating.
Ugh, the worst. It's like that unfinished stuff takes up even more space in my brain than if I just finished it.
That's the Zeigarnik effect. It's this thing where our brains, they just fixate on things that are incomplete more than things we've finished. Like there's this loop that needs to be closed.
Interesting. So how does this allure of the unfinished, how does it show up with technology?
Well, think about those articles that have those read more buttons that cut you off right in the middle, or games that make you wait hours for your energy to refill so you can play again. They're totally using the Zeigarnik effect to keep you coming back.
And social media is the same way. Those notifications that are like, someone commented on your post, you can't help but look.
It's true. It's like this really clever but kind of manipulative tactic. They're using our own psychology against us. But the good news is, once we see how it works, we can start to recognize it and resist it.
So next time I'm scrolling forever on social media or I get pulled into another YouTube spiral, I should ask myself, am I really enjoying this? Or am I just chasing that need to know what happens next?
Exactly. It's about being aware of what we're doing, setting boundaries, and remembering that our time and attention are valuable.
This whole deep dive into Irresistible has been so eye-opening. I'm realizing how much these patterns are everywhere in our lives and how much control we've just, given away to these technologies.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all, especially in this day and age. But the important thing to remember is that we're not powerless. Awareness is the first step to taking back control.
Love that. And Irresistible doesn't just point out the problem, it gives us hope. It's
Yeah.
about understanding what's happening so we can build a better relationship with tech.
Exactly. It's a call to action. We can choose how we interact with these things. We can design technology that helps us instead of hurting us.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. So much to think about, so much to unpack. What a great deep dive.
It really has. Always a pleasure to chat about this stuff with you.
Same here. Until next time, everybody, remember to use those stopping cues, be mindful, and don't let those unfinished loops run your life.